In this video, I'm going to show you how to install GNS3 version 2.2 on a Windows computer. In this example, I've got a Windows laptop. It's a brand new laptop running Windows 10. GNS3 hasn't been installed previously on this laptop. I'm controlling the laptop via VNC from my Mac. It just makes it easier to do recordings. One of the important things that you need to understand with regards to GNS3 is GNS3 has a client and a server component. Now, an important thing to understand about GNS3 is GNS3 consists of two main components. We have a Windows client, and then we have the GNS3 VM. The Windows client is a Windows executable which you run locally on your Windows operating system. But you also have a virtual machine. This is an Ubuntu VM that you run in either a hypervisor such as VirtualBox or VMware Workstation Pro or VMware Workstation Player or Hyper-V. So again, you have a Windows component and you have a virtual machine. At the moment, we use the GNS3 GUI application, so the Windows application to control the virtual machine, and you build your topologies using this Windows executable. GNS3 are working on a thin client, which is basically a web browser client. In this release, however, it's kind of limited. You can't do much with it, so I'm going to show you mainly how to use the GNS3 GUI application, in other words, the executable, to control the GNS3 VM. In this video, I'm going to show you how to download that executable, how to build a basic topology within GNS3. In subsequent videos, I'll show you how to use the GNS3 VM and run Cisco IOS images and other images on the GNS3 VM. You have an important decision to make. Once you've got your GUI up and running, you need to decide which hypervisor you're going to use. Are you going to use VirtualBox? Now, there are lots of restrictions with VirtualBox. Are you going to use VMware Workstation Pro or VMware Workstation Player? Or are you going to use ESXi? So run this on a full VMware server. So in subsequent videos, I'll show you how to do installations using those hypervisors such as Hyper-V and so forth. In this video, let me show you how to use the GNS3 GUI application and get a basic network working. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing you need to do is go to the GNS3 website. So you go to gns3.com, click free download. GNS3 is free software available under the GNU General Public License. You either need to sign up for an account or click login and log in with your credentials. So now that I've logged in, I'm asked, do I want to download the GNS3 GUI for Windows, Mac, or Linux? I'm going to download the GUI for Windows, and as you can see, the executable is downloaded. I'll close this window and click download again. Notice we're told that for optimal performance, we can also download the GNS3 VM. Now, as I've mentioned, I'll cover this in a separate video. You can download the GNS3 VM for VirtualBox, for VMware Workstation Pro, VMware Workstation Player, VMware Fusion if you've got a Mac, or ESXi. Now, they haven't updated their website yet, but if you go to Google and search for GNS3 GitHub, this link releases GNS3 GUI, shows us that the latest release of GNS3 is version 2.2, released 8 days ago at the time of this recording. What I want to point out here, and I'll just zoom in, is they have a GNS3 VM for Hyper-V, as well as KVM, VirtualBox, ESXi, and VMware Workstation. So if you want to use the GNS3 VM with Hyper-V, you can use this link. I'll put this link and other links below this video so you don't have to try and find the documentation and links yourself. Okay, but for the moment, I've downloaded the GNS3 GUI. So I'll open that up. So here's the download. I'm going to simply double click on that. Click install anyway. I'm going to click yes to allow this app to make changes to my device. The GNS3 setup wizard displays. For most of this video, I'm just going to take the defaults to keep things simple and get us started. So I'm going to click next. GNS3 is licensed under the GNU general public license. In other words, the software is free, but you do need to agree to that license. So I'm going to click agree. You need to choose a startup folder. I'm going to go with the default and click next. Now, GNS3 consists of the core GNS3 application, but it also contains other applications such as WinPCAP, Wireshark, Dynamips, QEMU, VPCS, and others. You can decide whether you want to install all of these applications or not. So as an example, you may decide that you don't want to use SolarPutty, and you could uncheck that. What I recommend that you do if you're new to GNS3 is just stay with the defaults. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to simply click next. I'm going to go with the default installation directory and click install. GNS3 will now install various software components. One of those is WinPCAP. So I'm going to click next, click agree, click install, click finish. Notice GNS3 is now downloading Wireshark from the internet. So if you are using mobile data, just be aware that Wireshark is going to be downloaded if you selected that as one of the options. So GNS3 is actually connecting to the internet, downloading Wireshark, and then installing it silently. Notice the S here. So silent installation of Wireshark. So if you're paying for data rather than having unlimited data, just be aware that the initial GNS3 application doesn't include Wireshark. That's going to be downloaded separately. Once Wireshark is installed, the GNS3 installation continues. And as an example, SolarPutty is downloaded and then installed. If you want to use SolarPutty, you need to agree to the end user license agreement and click accept. You then need to put in your email address. So put in your email address and click continue. And as you can see here, the GNS3 installation has completed. I'm going to click next. And now you have a choice. You can download the SolarWinds standard toolset. Now you don't have to install this. It's optional. You could also use the link below this video if you want to download that. I'm going to say no here. Click next. The checkbox start GNS3 is selected. I'm going to keep that and click finish to start GNS3. A GNS3 thank you page is displayed. I'm going to close that. And what you'll notice now is GNS3 has started up and a setup wizard is displayed. I'm going to click cancel on that setup wizard. This is important and this is what you want to see. Notice under service summary, it says laptop with the name CPU this, RAM this. In other words, GNS3 has started successfully. Now, if you have problems, first thing I recommend that you do is close GNS3 down. I've often had to shut down GNS3 and then start it up again after the initial installation to get it working. Again, when GNS3 starts, just wait. Notice service summary is blank at the moment. I want to get to the point where I see this service summary and I want to see it as green. If you don't see that, restart GNS3, restart your laptop, so reboot the entire computer. If that also doesn't work, then look at your firewall and your antivirus. Typically antivirus and typically firewalls stop the GNS3 server process from running. So make sure that you permit the GNS3 executable, the GNS3 server in your antivirus. So notice here I can see GNS3 is running. Make sure, if necessary, that you permit that through your firewall, permit that in your antivirus. Okay, so just to do that process again, when I shut down GNS3 and start it up again, I'm told that I need to create a project. Notice it's still starting up, connecting to local server. Just wait for that process to start. Make sure that you see this. And now I can create a new project. So my first GNS3 project. Click OK. Now what I suggest you do initially is set up a very basic topology. So I'm going to drag a switch into the topology. I'm also going to drag 2 VPCS devices into the topology. Start with something very basic and make sure that it works. I'm going to click on add a link. I'm going to add a link from the PC to the switch, like that. I'm going to show interface labels like that. Now GNS3 has a lot of functionality. One of the things that you can do is right click and then change the symbol. If you don't like the built-in symbols, then change them. So as an example, I'm going to go for Circle Blue. So Affinity Circle Blue and search for client. And I'm going to change that symbol to a blue client. Right click on this one, change symbol, Circle Blue, client, change that icon. On this switch, I'll change the symbol as well. I'm going to go for Square Blue in this case and select switch, click OK, and I've got a switch in my topology. Now, if you want to make it look good, click Snap to Grid. So go to View, Snap to Grid, and show the grid. And then you can get these devices to snap to a grid so that it looks better. Move it around as you like. Zoom in if you want to. And then what I'll do now is remove the grid so that my topology looks good, something like that. And then what I'll do is click Start to start up the topology. And then I'm going to open up a console to the devices. Now in this example, I installed Solar Putty. So Solar Putty has started up. I had an issue where the PCs weren't displayed, so I restarted Solar Putty so that I could see both PCs. But what you'll notice is the font is really small. So I'm going to click on the menu, go to Settings, go to General, and at the bottom here we've got this option, Fonts and Colors. And I'm going to launch Putty. You have to make these changes within Putty. I'm going to go to Appearance, and I'm going to change the appearance to bold, and let's say 18 to make it very big. I'm going to click OK, go to Session, click Default Settings, click Save, click Cancel, close Solar Putty down, open it up again by clicking on the console option. And what you'll notice now is my fonts are a lot bigger. If that's still not big enough, then again, just go into the menu, Setting, General, Launch Putty, Appearance, Change. Let's set this to 20. Click OK. Session. Click Default Settings. Click Save. Click Cancel. Close Solar Putty down. Open it up again. And that's how you change the fonts in Solar Putty. I'll make this a bit smaller. So there we go. Now in my topology, I've got two PCs, PC1 and PC2. So what I'll do is do a quick test, set the IP address of PC1 to 10.1.1.1 with a /24 mask. PC2 IP address 10.1.1.2.255.255.255.0. Once you've done that, if everything is working properly, you should be able to ping from one PC to the other, and I can. PC1 can ping PC2, and PC2 can ping PC1. So again, PC1 can ping PC2, and PC2 can ping PC1. I've successfully downloaded and installed the GNS3 GUI. I've successfully built a basic network. I've changed some settings in Solar Putty. The last thing I need to do is save my configuration. GNS3 doesn't automatically save the configurations of devices like, for instance, Packet Tracer does. You have to manually save your device configurations. Now, I don't need to save the configurations of this built-in switch in GNS3, but I do need to save the configurations of my VPCS devices. So what I can do now is shut GNS3 down. So it'll turn off the devices and it'll close GNS3 down. I'll close Solar Putty down, and then to prove that everything is working, I'll start up GNS3 once again. Wait for your servers to start. So wait for GNS3 to start up the servers. I can click on recent projects now. Here's my first GNS3 project. Click on that. That'll open up my project. I'll click start, click connect to console, and hopefully now I should have my topology back, which I do. So PC1, can it ping PC2? Yes, it can. Can PC2 ping PC1? Yes, it can. So that's how you download and install the GNS3 GUI. The next step is you need to integrate the GNS3 GUI with the GNS3 VM. But that means you have to make a decision. Are you going to use VMware Workstation Pro, VMware Workstation Player, VirtualBox, Hyper-V, ESXi? What are you going to use for your hypervisor software to run the GNS3 VM? Now, once you've made that decision, have a look at the list of videos that I've linked below or in this playlist. Decide which method you're going to use and then select the relevant video for the hypervisor that you're going to use. Now, if you don't mind, please would you subscribe to my YouTube channel? Please would you like this video and please click on the bell to get notifications. I'm David Bombal and I want to wish you all the very best. When you run GNS3 on a Windows computer, there are two main components that you need to be aware of. We have the GNS3 GUI application. This is an executable application that you install directly on Windows. But we also have the GNS3 VM, which you run within a hypervisor such as VMware Workstation Pro, VMware Workstation Player, Hyper-V, VirtualBox, ESXi as an example. In this video, which I've linked here as well as below, I showed you how to install the GNS3 GUI on this laptop. So I showed you how to download and install the GNS3 GUI on Windows 10. In this video, I'm going to show you how to download and install the GNS3 VM within VMware Workstation Pro. This is the recommended way to run the GNS3 VM. I've spoken to Jeremy, the creator of GNS3, multiple times, and he still recommends that you use VMware Workstation Pro, if possible, when running GNS3 on a Windows 10 computer. There are other options, such as VMware Workstation Player, which is free, but it does have some restrictions. In a separate video, I'll show you how to get that working. You can also use VirtualBox, which is free. Also, there are some issues with regards to using VirtualBox, especially on Intel processors. You could also use Hyper-V. Again, issues using IOU and viral images together on Hyper-V, so it's experimental in this version of GNS3. Or you could use GNS3 in the cloud or on an ESXi server. Again, if you want to run GNS3 locally on your computer, the recommended way to do that is to use VMware Workstation Pro. So download the GNS3 VM, run it within VMware Workstation Pro, and integrate that with your GNS3 GUI. Okay, so without further ado, I want to show you how to get that installed and set up. But before I do, let me ask you, please, if you don't mind, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the like button, and click on the bell to get notifications when I post a new video. Now, in this example, I'm controlling this Windows laptop from my Mac using VNC. It just makes it easier to do the recordings. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is go to gns3.com, click free download, either sign up for an account or log in. GNS3 is free software, but you do need to have an account to download the software. Now, I've previously shown you how to download the Windows executable. What we're going to do here, however, is click on download the GNS3 VM. And in this example, I'm going to select VMware Workstation and VMware Fusion because I want to run the GNS3 VM within VMware Workstation. Now, this is really important. The GNS3 GUI and the GNS3 VM have to be running the same version of software. So in this example, they are showing that the GNS3 VM is version 2.2.0, and that's the version that I'm currently downloading. So I previously downloaded GNS3 version 2.2 executable, and now I'm downloading the GNS3 VM version 2.2. They have to be the same version for things to work properly. So in the GNS3 GUI, if you go to File, About, notice the version 2.2.0. That has to match up to the GNS3 VM. Okay, so this is a zip file. What I'll do is right click and click Extract All and extract the GNS3 VM. As you can see, it's an OVA file. It's not recognized yet because I still need to download the VMware Workstation. So once again, there's the folder, there's the OVA. So in my web browser, I'm going to go to vmware.com. Go to Downloads, Workstation Pro. At the time of this recording, the latest release is version 15.5.0. There's a version for Windows and there's a version for Linux. I'm going to go to the Windows version and click Go to Downloads. And then I'm going to click Download Now. You need an account to download the software. So if you don't have an account, click Sign Up Now to sign up for an account. I have an account already, so I'm going to log in with my credentials. I'm going to agree to the end user license agreement, click Accept, and click VMware Workstation is now downloaded. It's about 540 meg in size. Okay, so that's downloaded. So in my downloads directory, I'm going to double click on the VMware Workstation executable and click Install. The VMware Workstation Pro installation wizard is started. Okay, so in my example, it says the installer requires that I restart my system. So I'm going to click Yes to restart the installation. Okay, so my computer has restarted. I'm going to go back to the downloads directory and start the VMware Workstation installation again. Click Yes to allow this app to make changes to my device. VMware installation runs again. Okay, so the setup wizard is displayed. I'm going to click Next. You need to agree to the license agreement. So read through the license agreement, check this checkbox, and click Next. Now I'm going to basically leave most settings at the defaults. So default installation directory, click Next. I'm not going to check for updates. I'm not going to join the custom experience program, click Next. I will create shortcuts, click Next. Now before I click Install, I'll show you something in Control Panel. So in Control Panel, Network and Internet, view network status and tasks, change adapter settings. I currently only have one network adapter. VMware will install additional network adapters. That's normal. So don't be surprised if you see additional network interfaces or adapters displayed here. Okay, so the VMware installation is going ahead. You can see a VMware shortcut has been created. It's now installing virtual network drivers. So there you go. There's Ethernet 3 VMware virtual Ethernet adapter has been created. You can also see additional adapters. The VMware installation is now completed. I'm going to click Finish. I can close this down. And what I'll be able to do is now start up VMware Workstation Pro. Now for this installation, I don't have a license key. This is something that you need to be aware of. I can only use the product for 30 days, and then I'll have to buy a license. If you want a free version of this, use VMware Workstation Player, not VMware Workstation Pro. But in this example, I'm going to click Continue. Click Yes. Click Finish. Okay, so VMware Workstation Pro has been successfully installed. What I'm going to do now is go to File, Open, go to my Downloads directory, go to my VMware Workstation directory, and select the GNS3 VM and click Open. Click Import. This now imports the GNS3 VM into VMware Workstation Pro. As you can see here, the virtual machine has been successfully imported with the default settings. Now you don't change the default settings in VMware Workstation Pro. You change the settings within the GNS3 GUI. So I'm going to shut VMware Workstation down and start up the GNS3 GUI. Just a warning, make sure that you've got the GNS3 GUI shut down before you install VMware Workstation Pro and set up the GNS3 VM. Okay, so GNS3 has now successfully started. I'm going to click cancel. At the moment, I only have a server running on this local laptop. So this is the local service running on Windows. What you need to do is go to Edit Preferences, and under Server, notice we have Local Server. That is the server that we're seeing over here. What we need to do is select GNS3 VM and enable the GNS3 VM. So check this checkbox, enable the GNS3 VM. Notice Workstation Play is recommended. That's what I'm using. The name of the VM is GNS3 VM. It's picked that up automatically from VMware Workstation. If you don't see it, click refresh and you should see that in the drop-down list. This is where you specify the amount of RAM and CPUs the GNS3 VM should use. The GNS3 GUI basically makes an API call to VMware and adjusts the size of the RAM and CPUs based on what you've set here. So make sure that you set it here and not in VMware Workstation. When you close the GNS3 GUI, what's going to happen to the GNS3 VM? Are you going to keep it running, suspend it, or stop it? I'll leave it at the default of stop and click OK. What you'll notice here is the GNS3 VM is starting. The GNS3 GUI makes an API call to VMware Workstation and basically starts the GNS3 VM automatically. And there you go, you can see the GNS3 VM is booting up. Version of operating system is Ubuntu 18.04, and there you go, GNS3 VM is configured. Version is 2.2.0. This is very important. Notice KVM support available is true. That should be set to true. If it's not, right-click on the GNS3 VM and go to Settings. And under Processes, we need to check this checkbox, Virtualize Intel VTX-X, EPT or AMD-V. Now, this requires that VTX is enabled in the BIOS of your computer. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. Okay, so I need to enable Nested Virtualization or VTX on my laptop. So what I'm going to do is shut it down. I'm going to power it on. And in this example, for this laptop, I'm going to hold the F2 key down. So you can see here BIOS information. What I'm going to do is go to the next menu. And the important piece is Intel Virtualization Technology. That's currently enabled. There are some other options like hyperthreading, Intel AES-NI, VTD, but the one that I want is Intel Virtualization Technology. You need that to be enabled to do nested virtualization in VirtualBox or a VMware Workstation. So I'm going to save those settings and say yes to save. The laptop will reboot. Okay, so now I can log in. And I've been able to log in successfully. So if you have problems, make sure that Intel Virtualization Technology or VTX, Intel VTX is enabled on your laptop. But you also need to enable VTX on the VM. You can't do that while the VM is running, so you'll have to shut it down. Now that looks good. Notice back in the GNS3 VM, everything is green. So in this case, everything looks good. But what I'm going to do just to make sure that everything is working properly is shut the GNS3 application down or GUI down. And notice the VM is also shut down. So if you have issues, again, shut the GUI down, reboot your computer. Also make sure that VTX is enabled in the BIOS of your computer. If everything is working properly, we should be able to start up the GNS3 application. And under Service Summary, we should see two servers now. the Windows server as well as the GNS3 VM. So we can see Windows over there. And that's actually just kicked the GNS3 VM into starting. So there's my Windows server. Here's my VM, which is starting up. Back in VMware, we can see it busy booting up. It's a bit slow on this computer because I haven't allocated a lot of RAM and CPU to the VM. Once again, very important, you need to make sure that KVM support is available. So that all looks good. If KVM is not available, again, make sure that you enable it in the BIOS of your computer, and also shut down GNS3. Go into VMware Workstation, right-click on the VM, go to Settings, make sure that this is enabled. So Intel VTX. Now the amount of RAM and CPU available for your VM depends on your computer. The more you can allocate, the better, basically. But again, this depends on your computer. So in this example, I've got a Windows 10 computer. It's got 8 gig of RAM, 64-bit operating system. It's an i7 processor. So I could allocate more to my GNS3 VM. Again, you don't do it through VMware Workstation. So I'm going to close that down. You do that through the GNS3 GUI. So start up your GNS3 GUI, make sure that everything boots up properly and starts up properly. So again, my Windows server has started. GNS3 VM is booting. While I'm waiting for that, I'm going to click Cancel here, go to Edit Preferences, GNS3 VM, and what you could do here is, for instance, allocate more RAM and more CPUs to the GNS3 VM. As soon as I do that, the GNS3 VM will reboot. So just to show you the settings, at the moment, it's got 2 gig of RAM, it's got 1 CPU. But when I click Apply here, those changes will be made. The GNS3 VM is shut down and it's restarted with the new settings. So now it's rebooting. That was a bit quick. So back in settings, notice the RAM and processors have been adjusted. That once again depends on the processing power and memory in your laptop or in your computer. If you're using viral images as an example, you need to allocate enough memory and enough RAM to run a large topology if you want to do that. I'll put a link below this video with a calculator that helps you determine how much RAM and CPU you need depending on the appliances that you want to run. Okay, but back in GNS3, I'm going to create a new blank project. And let's say my first VM project. Click OK. Now I don't have any Cisco routers at the moment. I don't have any Cisco switches at the moment. What I can do as an example is drag my VPCS device and tell GNS3 to run it on the GNS3 VM. So this is a good test to make sure that things are working properly between GNS3 and the GNS3 VM. I'll also drag the built-in switch and run that on the GNS3 VM. It's recommended that you run topologies on the GNS3 VM. Now in the previous video, I showed you how to change symbols. I'll just do that quickly here. So I'll change these to clients. I'll change this to a switch. I won't worry too much about making this look pretty. I just want to show you that I can get a topology running on the GNS3 VM. So add interface labels. I'll start that up. And I'll open up a console to those devices. So these devices are running on the GNS3 VM. They're not running on Windows. Okay, I'm having an issue with SolarPutty. It's only showing one computer, so I'll shut SolarPutty down and open up console connections again. Okay, so I've got PC1. PC2 is not showing. I'll open up a console manually. And there it is. So on PC1, I'll give it an IP address of 10.111/24 mask. PC2, give it an IP address of 10.112/24 mask. Hopefully PC1 will be able to ping PC2, which it can, and PC2 will hopefully be able to ping PC1, which it can. And that's actually should be PC1, which it can. So network is working. I'll save my device configurations, close Solar Putty down, stop the GNS3 topology, and shut GNS3 down. Now, as a last test, I'll start GNS3 back up again and make sure that I can restore the topology. It's a good idea to wait for the GNS3 VM to start before you try and open up your projects. So before I try and open this project, I'm going to wait for the GNS3 VM to boot up properly. So wait until you see something like this, and then select my first project. Okay, so project is back. Start it up. Open up console connections. And PC1 should hopefully be able to ping PC2, which it can. In this example, Solar Putty is having an issue opening this device, so I'm going to manually open up a console to that device. So there you go. I'll ping PC1 from PC2. Okay, so there you go. I've successfully downloaded the GNS3 VM. I've successfully integrated the GNS3 GUI with the GNS3 VM. I've created a basic topology that's running on the GNS3 VM. I've tested that it all works. I can save the topology. I can restore it. Okay, so if you don't mind, if you enjoyed this video, please would you like it? Please would you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please would you click on the bell to get notifications when I post a new video. I'm David Bombal. I want to wish you all the very best. In previous videos in this series, which I've linked here and below, I showed you how to download and install the GNS3 GUI. I showed you how to download and install the GNS3 VM, how to integrate the GUI and the VM together. In this video, I'm going to show you how to download Cisco IOS images. So in other words, get images such as Cisco IOS V, Cisco IOS V Layer 2, so that you can build topologies with both routers and switches, as well as Docker containers. So let's build a proper network topology with routers, switches, and PCs, in other words, Docker containers to make it easier, and see if we can test Cisco IOS directly within GNS3. Now, please, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Like this video, as well as click on the bell to get notifications when I upload a new video. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. In this example, I'm using GNS3 version 2.2. What I'm going to do is create a new blank project, and I'll call this Cisco IOS. So I've created a new topology. Notice that I'm using a local server as well as the GNS3 VM. In other words, I've already got the GNS3 VM integrated with GNS3. This is really important. A lot of people have asked me, David, why do we need the GNS3 VM? The simple answer is appliances such as IOS V, IOS V Layer 2, ASA V, Nexus V, Juniper, Cumulus Linux, other appliances require the GNS3 VM to run. Now, there have been some recent enhancements which may allow us to run QEMU on Windows, but it's still experimental, doesn't necessarily work. QEMU is the way that we virtualize some of these appliances, and it requires Linux. So we need the GNS3 VM, which is running the Ubuntu operating system, to allow us to use QEMU and virtualize Cisco IOS images and other appliances in our GNS3 topologies. So the short answer is you need the GNS3 VM if you want to run Cisco VIRL images in your GNS3 topologies. Okay, so I'll open up a web browser and go to virl.cisco.com. Now I need to warn you, I'm going to show you how to get images legally. You can find images on the internet, and neither I nor GNS3 recommend that you do that. So I've gone to virl.cisco.com. I'm going to click on Get VIRL. If you don't have a VIRL account, you'll need to buy this for $199 a year. Unfortunately, that's the way Cisco do things. I can't change that. Cisco require that you buy images to be able to use them. Other vendors such as Cumulus or Arista allow you to download images from their website without any cost and use them in topologies such as GNS3. But with Cisco, you have to pay to get images. That's just the way that Cisco do it. I'm going to click Login to log into my account. I'll log in with my username, log in with my password, click My Account, and now I have this option to download VIRL. Now to download the images, click on All Releases, select one here, and then choose the images that you want to download. So in my example, I want to download iOS V Layer 2. So I'm going to select that and click Download. I'm going to accept the license agreement. And as you can see here, viOS Layer 2 QCOW file is being downloaded. I'm going to select iOS V. I'm going to click here because I want to download the latest release. Click Accept License Agreement. And unfortunately, this time it's not allowing me to download. There's some problem with the Cisco website. I'll try again. Okay, so it worked this time. I can now download viOS Advanced Enterprise. Okay, so once they've downloaded, I'll be able to import them into GNS3. So I'll speed up the video at this point so we don't have to wait for the files to download. Okay, so the images have downloaded. Here's iOS V Layer 2. Here's viOS or iOS V. So in GNS3, I'm going to go to Routers, click New Template. I'm going to install an appliance from the GNS3 server. Click Next. In this example, I'm going to select Routers, Cisco iOS V. Notice the emulator is QEMU, which means we want to run this on the GNS3 VM. I'm going to click Install. I want to install the appliance on the GNS3 VM. This is recommended. Notice Remote Server is grayed out. That's because I don't have a remote server configured. I can't run this on the local computer, so I'm going to click Next. QEMU settings, I'm going to leave at the defaults and click Next. GNS3 scans the local directory for files that are required. It's found the viOS image, which I've got in my downloads directory. It doesn't have the startup config file, so I'm going to select that and click Download to download the config file. That takes me to sourceforge.net. I'm not going to accept their tracking. I'm going to save the file to my local computer. Back in GNS3, click Refresh. The file has been found. I've got my operating system, so I can click Next. I'm asked, would I like to install iOS V? Yes. The image is uploaded to the GNS3 VM. I'm also told that there's no default password and enable password. I'm going to click Finish and then click OK. So iOS V has now been successfully installed. I'm going to go to Switches, click New Template. I'm going to install an appliance from the GNS3 server. Click Next. In this example, I want to install Cisco iOS V Layer 2, also QEMU appliance. Click Install. I'm also going to install the appliance on the GNS3 VM and click Next. I'll leave the QEMU settings at defaults. Click Next. I can see that this appliance is ready to be installed. Click Next. Say yes to install it. There's no default password and enable password. Operating system has been copied to the GNS3 VM. Click Finish. Click OK. I now have an iOS V layer 2 switch, which I'll drag to the GNS3 workspace. I'll do the same with a router. And actually, I'll add 2 routers to my topology. So I've got router 1, switch 1, and router 2. I'll connect the router to the switch and the switch to the second router. Now, these take a while to boot up. So what I'll do is start them up while I'm busy fixing my topology. I'll also open up a console to the devices. So my first iOS V device is displayed, my switch is displayed, but my second router isn't. So I'll right click and click console. That's now displayed in SolarPuTTY. So there's my first router, here's my switch, here's my second router. So while those are booting up, I'll change the symbols here. You can change it through the templates if you want to. So I'll show you that in a moment. But for now, I'll simply change the router symbols and switch symbol directly through the GNS3 workspace. So I want to change the symbol of the switch. In this case, I want to set it to square. I'll use a multi-layer switch here. So there's my switch and my 2 routers. To make the topology look good, I'll snap them to the grid and show the grid. So I'll snap them like that so they look better. I'll also show interface labels so that looks better. And then I'll remove the grid and remove the snap to grid. So there's my topology. I could also fit in view that way to make them bigger so they fit nicely. Back in SolarPuTTY, devices are booting up. Now this GNS3 VM doesn't have a lot of RAM and CPU. All I allocated to it was 2 gig and 1 virtual CPU. So not much has been allocated. You probably want to allocate more than that if you're going to be running iOS V layer 2 switches and iOS V routers. So as you can see, they're not running that quickly in this topology. But okay, my first router has booted, so let's give it a name, router 1. I'll give the gigabit interface an IP address of 10.111/24 mask. I'll configure a loopback on the router as well of, let's say, that. So show IP interface brief shows me the IP address on the gigabit interface and IP address on the loopback interface. I'll save the router configuration. That's now been saved. On router 2, do something similar. Host router 2, interface gigabit 00, no shut it, IP address 10.112/24 mask. I'll create a loopback of, let's say, 2.2.2.2. And hopefully I'll be able to ping router 1 from router 2. So actually router 1. And there you go. So router 2 can ping router 1. And router 1 can hopefully ping router 2, which it can. What I'll do on router 2 as well is enable OSPF. So let's enable a routing protocol on this router. I'll put all interfaces in area 0. Do the same on router 1. So router OSPF 1. Put all interfaces in area 0. So hopefully we'll form a neighbor relationship from router 1 to router 2. So at the moment it's two-way. Might take it a while because I once again don't have a lot of RAM and CPU enabled on the GNS3 VM. While we're waiting, I'll save the router configurations. So show IP OSPF neighbor, still two-way. I haven't configured the switch, so I'll simply give the switch a host name, and then I could on VLAN 1 give it an IP address as well to make it part of the topology. So something like that. And it should hopefully be able to ping the routers in the topology. So there's my ping. it can ping router 1, and it can ping router 2. So I'll save the config of that switch as well. So show IP OSPF neighbor on router 1. We can see that the relationship went to full. You can see that there again. Show IP route. Routing table is displayed, and router 1 should be able to ping the loopback of router 2, which it can. Router 2 should be able to ping the loopback of router 1, which it can. Okay, so there's a topology with a Cisco switch and 2 Cisco routers. I said I'd show you how to add a Docker container to the network. So under End Devices, I'm going to add a new template. I'm going to install this from the GNS3 server. Click Next. I'm going to use a guest. In this example, I'll simply choose something like Ubuntu Docker Guest Container. This runs Docker, which means it'll automatically download the operating system and make it available to me. So I'll install the appliance on the GNS3 VM and click Finish. Appliance has been installed. Now again, you can change your templates so that you don't have to constantly change the symbols in the topology. So here I'll choose Client so that my template is using the affinity symbols. So when I drag it in to the topology, that symbol will be used. Now in this example, GNS3 is doing a pull, so it's pulling the image and installing the Docker container automatically. And this is what I like about Docker. You don't have to download a VM. You don't have to do some complicated setup. You can simply add it to your topologies and then pull it into your topology. Okay, so there's my Docker container added to the topology. Now, when you right-click on this, you can go to Edit Config, and you can statically configure the IP address here or use DHCP. So what I'll do is I'll manually configure the PC with that IP address, default gateway, and DNS server. So basically pointing it to router 1. I'll click Save, and then I'll start this up. And then I'll right-click and open up a console. So hopefully now my Docker container will have an IP address. So ifconfig. IP address is this. Ping 10.1.1.1. I can ping router 1 and router 2 and the switch from my Docker container. Just to prove the point, on the router, debug IP ICMP. On the Docker container, ping router 1. Notice in the output you can see the debugs showing us that the ping was received successfully. So the Docker container can ping the router, and the router can ping the Docker container. Okay, so that's how you get a topology up and running in GNS3 with Cisco devices. I've got a Cisco switch, I've got 2 Cisco routers, I've also added a Docker container to this topology. This is all running on the GNS3 VM, which in this example is hosted in VMware Workstation Pro. Now don't forget, as always, when you've got devices such as Cisco devices, you should save your configurations once you've finished. In this example, I don't have to change my Docker container's IP address. That was configured through the GNS3 GUI. I'm going to stop my GNS3 topology, and I'm going to close GNS3 down. That will shut the GNS3 GUI, but it'll also shut down VMware. So in other words, the GNS3 VM has also been closed. I'll start up GNS3 again, just to make sure that everything works. Once again, when you see this, wait until your servers have started. So don't try and open your topology yet. Wait for the GNS3 VM to boot up, successfully show the GNS3 menu, and then you can open your GNS3 topology. So there you go, it's booted up. So I'm going to select Recent Project Cisco iOS. There are my Cisco devices and my Docker container. I'll click Start to start this up. and I'll open up a console to those devices. Okay, so there's my first router booting up. There's my second router. Here's my switch. And here's my Docker container. One of the advantages of Docker is it boots up extremely quickly. So it's almost instant boot on Docker containers. These devices will take a while to boot up. Now it's taken it a while, but the devices have booted up. You may hear that there's a lot of noise. The fan on this laptop is going crazy because these devices are quite large and use quite a bit of memory and CPU. But as you can see there, show IP route on router 1. We've learnt a route to the loopback of router 2. So I can ping the loopback of router 2. On router 2, I should be able to ping the loopback of router 1, which I can. Switch should be able to ping both those routers. I haven't enabled a routing protocol on the switch yet, but I could do that if I wanted to get it to ping the loopbacks. Docker container should be able to ping the loopback of router 1, which it can, and it should be able to ping the loopback of router 2, which it can. It's got a default gateway of router 1, so it can successfully ping the loopbacks of both the routers. Okay, there you go. I've successfully built a topology with Cisco devices and a Docker PC in my topology. Now, if you don't mind, if you enjoyed this video, please like it. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please click on the bell to get notifications when I post a new video. I'm David Bombal, and I want to wish you all the very best. In this video, I'm going to discuss Cisco VIRL version 2.0. This is the newest version of Cisco VIRL, which should hopefully be released in April 2020. I spoke with Ralph and Simon, core developers of Cisco VIRL, at Cisco Live 2019. I've linked that video here and below if you're interested in seeing details of Cisco VIRL 2.0. In this video, however, I'm going to show you how to download and install Cisco VIRL, how to get it up initially, and build a basic topology. The Cisco VIRL team have really simplified the process. Rather than you having to install a thick client and a virtual machine and do a whole bunch of other things to get it working, the installation is very, very simple. Okay, so let's get started. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get Cisco VIRL 2.0 up and running on a Windows 10 computer. To get that working, you need virtualization software. Currently, the only virtualization software supported is VMware Workstation Pro or VMware Workstation Player. VMware Workstation Player is free software that you can download from vmware.com, or you can get the paid version of VMware Workstation Pro. But I'm going to show you how to get this up and running without paying for VMware Workstation Pro. We're going to use Player, which is free software. There is no thick client anymore. All you need to download is the OVA from VIRL, as well as an ISO that contains all the images. So the huge advantage with Cisco VIRL over other products such as GNS3 or EVE-NG is you get all the Cisco images such as iOS V, iOS V Layer 2, ASA V, you get Nexus V, you get a whole bunch of Cisco images as part of your download. So you download a separate ISO that has all the images. You get an OVA, which runs the core VIRL product. You get an ISO. You map that ISO to your virtual machine that you import using the OVA, and you get access to all the images that you require. You can also add your own images. You can download updated images and use that with Cisco VIRL. So one of the advantages of using Cisco VIRL over other products is you get all the images. The installation is also a lot simpler than EVE-NG and even GNS3. Installation is very, very simple. It's much easier to get pre-built images up and running with Cisco VIRL. So if you're new to virtualization technologies, if you're new to Cisco images such as iOS V Layer 2, I'd recommend that you get Cisco VIRL. It makes life a lot easier. Now, there are some disadvantages to using Cisco Virl. You have to pay a license fee of about $200 a year, but you need to pay that license fee even if you wanted to use Cisco images in other virtualization technologies such as GNS3 or EVE-NG. You need to be legally compliant. This is actually the only non-gray area, totally legal way of running Cisco images, because you're getting a Cisco official product with Cisco official support. So Cisco Virl is probably the best product to use today if you want to run Cisco images and you want to make sure that you're on the right side of the law. So there are no gray areas. This is an official product from Cisco and you get all the images as part of your subscription service. Another disadvantage of Cisco Virl is it's limited to 20 devices. You can't run more than 20 devices in your topology. However, for a lot of us, that's more than enough. But if you're studying for your CCIE or you're trying to replicate a large topology, you will be limited to running only 20 devices in your topology. If you want to run really large scale networks, you need to get a separate product from Cisco. You could also try running Cisco images in GNS3 and EVE-NG, but just be aware that you're running into a gray area legally if you use those products. You cannot use a VirtualBox with Cisco Virl. I'm recording this video in March 2020. The new release should be available in April 2020. So I've got a pre-release version of Cisco Virl here that I'm going to demonstrate. Please refer to the documentation for the latest information. I'll also be creating updated videos if things do change, but currently you can only use VMware products such as VMware Workstation Pro or VMware Workstation Player. You cannot use VirtualBox if you want to run Cisco Virl. However, VMware Workstation Player is free software that you can download from VMware's website. So simply go to vmware.com, go to downloads, go to free product downloads, and select Workstation Player. At the time of this recording, the current release is 15.5. So click download now to download this version of VMware Workstation Player. Current release is once again 15.5.2 and this sub-release ending in 246. So I'm going to click save to save that to my local hard drive. Size is 138 meg. So just be aware of the size. It's 138 meg in size. Okay, so my VMware Player has downloaded. All I need to do is double click on the executable to start the installation. Windows warns me that I downloaded this from the internet. I'm going to click install anyway. And as you can see, VMware Player is now installing. The installation is really simple. I'm basically just going to use the defaults when installing VMware Workstation Player. Okay, so the installation wizard displays. I'm going to click next. I'm going to accept the license agreement. Make sure that you agree to the license agreement. So just that you're aware, VMware Workstation Player is free for non-commercial use. If you want to use a commercial product, you need to buy VMware Workstation Pro, but Player is free for studying, as an example. So I'm assuming that's what most of us are going to be using Cisco Virl for, is for building labs and studying. So this product is great if you want to simply study for your CCNA, CCNP, or CCIE. I'm going to click next. I'm going to leave the installation folder at defaults, click next. I'm not going to join the VMware Custom Experience Improvement Program. I'm going to click next. I'm going to keep the default shortcuts, click next. Now just before I click install, I'm going to open Control Panel, and I want you to see that under Network and Internet, Network and Sharing Center, change adapter settings, that I don't have a VMware Workstation Player network interface card, but I do have a VirtualBox network interface card. And that's because I previously installed VirtualBox on this computer. Now, when I click install, what you'll notice is VMware Workstation Player will create a network interface. That is normal behavior. So it's expected that VMware Workstation Player creates a specific network adapter for the application. That is once again default behavior. You can see here that it's installing virtual network drivers, and you can see in Control Panel that to VMware virtual Ethernet adapters have been created. So there you go. I've now installed VMware Workstation Player. I'm going to click Finish. So software is now installed. I can double click on the desktop icon. Product has now started. Notice we're told that it's for non-commercial use only. You might get a pop-up that you have to agree to when you first start the software. You can see here that I've got Kali Linux and EVE-NG Pro as virtual machines on this computer ready, but that's not the virtual machine that we want to start. What we want to do is download Cisco Virl. So I'm going to go to virl.cisco.com to download Cisco Virl. Now you do need an account to download the software. So I'm going to click Get Virl. And notice you can see the price, $199 per year at the time of this recording. That gives you 20 nodes. Again, you are limited to 20 nodes in your topologies, $200 a year. Now in my example, I already have an account, so I'm going to click Login. I'm going to put in my username, click Next, put in my password, click Sign In, and I'm going to go to my account. My current Virl account is still active, so I'm going to click Download Virl. Now this site can be slow, so you may need to wait for the page to refresh. As I mentioned previously, I'm recording this video before Cisco Virl 2.0 has been officially released. So when I click on the downloads, I don't see version 2 Cisco Virl downloads. I only see previous releases of Cisco Virl. So as an example here, I can see version 1.665. If I click on 1 over here, I can see different releases of Cisco Virl, and I can download various iOS images such as iOS V Layer 2. Now typically in the past, you would have to download an OVA for Cisco Virl or an ISO to do a bare metal installation. And the installation was quite complicated. In this video, which I've linked here and below, I show you how to install the current release of Cisco Virl, in other words, version 1.x. But now I'm going to show you how to install version 2. So hopefully, depending on when you're watching this video, you'll see version 2 downloads on this page, and you'll be able to download Cisco Virl version 2. Now be aware, big warning, the download files are large. You have an OVA image, that's the actual Cisco Virl image. It's only 700 meg. But this ISO that contains the various images is 6.3 gig at the time of this recording. So this OVA is the OVA that you need to download and open in VMware Workstation Player. Then you need to map the ISO in your virtual machine so that you can import the images. Okay, so let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go to Player, File, Open. Go to my downloads and select the OVA. So I'm simply opening this OVA in VMware Workstation Player. So I'm going to click Open. I'm going to leave everything at defaults wherever possible. So I'm going to click Import. So VMware Workstation Player is now importing that OVA, and as soon as it's imported, I should be able to boot up Cisco Virl. In other words, the installation is very, very simple. But before you boot it up, make sure that you right-click and go to Settings. Now by default, Cisco Virl is configured to use 8 gig of RAM. That means that your computer needs to support 8 gigs of RAM. If it doesn't, you need to lower the amount of RAM that Virl uses, but it's recommended that you use 8 gig of RAM. That's not possible on my computer. My computer only has 8 gig of RAM. So I'm going to lower this to 4096, so 4 gig of RAM. Be careful lowering the amount of RAM. Now, as always, if you lower the RAM and lower the amount of CPUs that a virtual machine can use, it means you can't build as large topologies as you could if you allocate more RAM and more CPU to the virtual machine. Now this is very important. Intel VTX or AMD-V needs to be enabled, and we're going to virtualize CPU performance counters. Now because I get this question all the time, I'm going to show you now, as part of this video, how to enable VTX in the BIOS of an Intel computer as well as an AMD computer. If you already have VTX enabled on your computer, then skip to this timestamp in this video. So for those of you who don't know how to enable VTX, I'm going to show you that now. If you do know how to do that and you've already got it enabled, then jump to this point in the video. I'm going to try and boot up this Kali Linux host, and I get this error. Error while powering on. The host supports Intel VTX, but Intel VTX is disabled. Intel VTX might be disabled if it has been disabled in the BIOS firmware settings, or your host has not been power cycled since you changed the setting. We're then told how to fix this issue, but rather than just trying to read this, I'm going to show you how to do that. Now that's an example on an Intel CPU. Let's have a look at AMD. So here's another laptop. This example is running Windows 8 on an AMD processor. Similar kind of issue exists. I'll start up a VirtualBox, and I'll try and boot up the Kali Linux host. Notice I get the same issue, failed to open a session for the virtual machine. Here we're told that AMD-V is disabled in the BIOS or by the host operating system. So once again, in this example, I'm not able to boot up Kali Linux because AMD-V has been disabled in the BIOS of the laptop. Now in this example, I've got an Asus laptop. It's got an Intel CPU, and I've got an HP laptop that's got an AMD CPU. The process that you follow will vary depending on the manufacturer. So on Asus, as an example, I need to reboot the laptop and press F2 to go into the BIOS settings. On HP, I need to use F10 to go into the BIOS settings. So refer to the documentation for your manufacturer to determine which key you need to use to get into the BIOS. Or just use Google to do a search to find out which key to use to get into the BIOS for your specific laptop or computer. So I'll now show you how to enable VTX on a laptop that has an Intel processor as well as a laptop that has an AMD processor. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is shut the laptop down. So I'm going to click power, shut down to shut the computer down. The laptop has been shut down. Now because this is an Asus laptop, I need to press power and F2. So F2 will take me to the BIOS. And as you can see, I'm now in the BIOS of the computer. So they tell you which keystrokes to use. So as an example, right arrow will take me from one menu to the other. So I've gone from the main menu to advanced. And what I want to enable is Intel virtualization technology. At the moment, it's disabled. So I want to select that option, once again using the arrow keys. Go to Intel virtualization technology, press enter, and then specify enabled. So what I'm going to do now is use the right arrow key, go to save and exit, make sure that I've selected save and exit, press enter, and then press enter again to save the configuration and exit. Laptop is now rebooted. And now I can enter my PIN and log in. And there you go. I've logged into the laptop. What I'm going to do now is start VirtualBox. Select Kali Linux and then go to Start to start it up. And what you'll notice now is the virtual machine can boot up successfully. So there you go. Kali is booting. And I can now log in. Default username is Kali, password is Kali once again. And I've successfully logged into this virtual machine that's running on a Windows computer within the VirtualBox. Same thing will happen with VMware Workstation. select the virtual machine, power it on, and I can once again boot up the virtual machine. I can log in, default username, Kelly, and I'm able to log in to this Kali virtual machine running within VMware Workstation Player on an Intel laptop. Okay, so I'll do something similar on this computer with an AMD processor. Go to the Start menu, I'll select Power Options, and I'll select Shutdown to shut down the computer. Computer is now shutting down. Okay, this is a HP laptop, so I need to use F10. So I'll start the laptop, press F10. Okay, so something similar needs to be done here. I'm going to go to System Configuration, Virtualization Technology. So virtualization technology is currently disabled. What I need to do is press Enter, select Enabled, press Enter, and then I need to exit. So save my configuration and exit. Press Enter to save the changes. The laptop is now rebooted. We can see that the HP laptop is booting up. This is an older laptop, so it's quite slow. Okay, I need to put my password in, press Enter to log in. I've now successfully logged in. Okay, so I can start a VirtualBox. I'll select my Kali Linux host, and then I'll press Start to start it up. As you can see, it's now booting up. I can select Kali Linux. I'll press Enter. We can see that the virtual machine is booting. Once again, this is a slow laptop, so it's taking its time to boot up. But there you go, after a while, it booted. I can log in with my username of Kali, password of Kali. And I've successfully logged into this virtual machine, which is running within a VirtualBox on a computer with an AMD processor. Okay, so VTX is enabled in the BIOS. I've enabled it here in the virtual machine. What I do need to do now, which is very important, is connect an ISO image. So I'm going to browse to my downloads directory, and I'm going to select this ISO image. So just to remind you once again, the OVA image is the virtual machine that we've imported, but the Cisco images that are required to run Cisco routers and switches are part of that ISO. So I need to add that to the virtual machine. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to click Start to boot up Cisco Virl. Okay, so I'm told, do I want to download and install the following software tools? I want to do that. So VMware Tools for Linux. I want to get those downloaded and installed. My internet connection here in South Africa is a bit slow, so it's taking a bit of time to download. Now, as always, speeds vary depending where you are in the world. But as you can see here, the VMware tools are being downloaded and extracted. VMware is now being updated. Okay, so updates are finished. I'm going to click Close. And notice we now have a virtual machine running Virl 2. I'm going to click in the virtual machine and press Enter to continue. I have to agree to the license agreement. Use Tab to jump from one menu option to another. So I'm going to accept the end user license agreement by pressing Enter. Now we're told, welcome to Virl 2 first deployment configuration. Before the system can be used, we need to set up 2 user accounts. You need a privileged Linux system user account and the first admin controller user account. After this, the admin controller user can be used to log into the web UI via HTTPS on TCP port 443. Okay, so basically we need a user account for the CLI and one for the GUI. I'm going to press Enter to continue. We're given some information about how to navigate. So cursor keys, Control P, Control N can be used to navigate. You can press Tab. You can use Tab to switch between input fields and buttons, spacebar to select items. I'm going to simply press Enter to continue. Okay, so I'm going to use the default usernames that Virl gives me. I'm going to simply set my password to Cisco. Probably not a great password, but there you go. Now what I'm going to do is use Windows key and print screen to save a screenshot of what I've done so that I can remember the username that I created. You don't have to do that obviously, but that makes it easier for me. Press Tab, press Enter to continue. Now I'm told my password must be 8 characters. So Cisco123, Cisco123. Press continue. Now we're told that the password is quite bad. Do I want to continue anyway? Yes, I do. So I'm going to press Tab and press Enter to continue. Told that my password isn't strong. Do I want to continue? That's fine for my example. This is only a lab and a demonstration, so I'm not too concerned about the passwords. Obviously, you will want to use good passwords, not like I'm doing here. Okay, so we now need to create a second user. This is the admin user, which is used to log into the web UI. I'm going to set the password to Cisco123 for this user. And then I'm going to take a screenshot. So once again, on my screenshots, I can see the username used for the web UI and also the user used for the Linux system. Press Tab, press Enter to continue. I'm told once again that my password isn't good. I'm okay with that. Password isn't strong. I'm okay with that. Say yes to continue. Now, you can use either a static IP address or DHCP for your Virl server. We're told here that it's optional to use a static IP address. It's typically okay to use DHCP. Only change this when a static IP address is actually required. So I'm going to simply use DHCP in this example and press Enter to continue. A summary is displayed. So I'll take a screenshot of this page as well. So I've got my summary information. Okay, press Enter to confirm. So that's basically all you need to do to set up Cisco Virl. The developers have really made this simple compared to the previous releases of Cisco Virl. There's one more thing that I have to do, and that's license the Virl server. But I'll do that through the web interface once the server has completed the installation. Now this isn't a very quick laptop, but there you go. Installation has completed. I can wait for the countdown or just press Enter to reboot the server. And there you go. It's done. I could log in to the CLI. I don't want to do that. I want to log into the GUI. And I'm told the IP address to use, which is 192.168.255.1. Okay, so I'm surprised by this IP address, 192.168.255.1. My local subnet is 10.0.0.0. So that IP address doesn't look right. So let's see firstly if I can ping that IP address, 192.168.255.1. At the moment, I can't ping that IP address. So let's log in. My user account was sysadmin. Password was Cisco123. I'll use IP address to see the address. We can see the IP address here is 192.168.255.1. But what I'm going to do is shut down the server. So shut down -H now to shut down the server because I want to see what VMware did with the network interface card. So in VMware Workstation Player, I'll right-click on the virtual machine, go to Settings, go to Network Adapter. It says bridged here, which is correct, but I'm going to click Configure Adapters. And here's a problem. For some reason, we've got a VirtualBox host-only Ethernet adapter. You shouldn't have that problem. This has affected me because I'm running VirtualBox as well. So I'm going to only use my Realtek wireless network adapter and click OK. And click OK again. Now, just to explain this, I want to bridge this virtual machine to my local network so that I can access the virtual machine from the outside. So rather than using NAT or host only, I want to be able to bridge VIRL to external devices. So I want to use bridged, but I want to make sure that I'm only bridged to my wireless network adapter in this example. So let's start up VIRL again, and let's see if that works better this time. So it's starting up. It's going to boot up CentOS Linux. I like to do demonstrations where I encounter problems so that you can see the problems that I encounter, and perhaps if you also encounter these problems, you can fix them. Okay, so that's a lot better. That's an IP address in my local subnet. I'm connected to a home internet router here, and it's allocating IP addresses in the 10.0.0.0 subnet. So that looks a lot better. That's an IP address that I would expect. So I'm going to open up a web browser, and I'm going to use HTTPS, and I'm going to browse to 10.0.0.168. Okay, so we told the connection is not private. That's great. It's using self-signed certificate. I'm going to proceed to the VIRL interface, and there you go. I can log in now as my admin user. Once again, going to my screenshots, the admin user is the user to use to log into the web UI. Sysadmin is for Linux. So I'm going to use admin, password of Cisco123, click login, and there you go. I've got Cisco VIRL up and running. Now, something I need to do is edit the licensing settings. I need to register my license, but there's nothing stopping me going to Lab Manager and adding a lab. And what I can do now is drag Cisco devices into my topology. I can zoom in, so there's 2 switches as an example. In my topology, I can move them around. I can drag a router into my topology. When I hover my mouse over the device, this little pop-up displays, and I can click on the connection and drag that to the other device, and then decide which interface to connect. So I'm going to connect Gigabit Ethernet 00 on the router to Ethernet 00 on the switch. Do the same thing here, drag a connection, connect Gigabit Ethernet 01 to Gigabit Ethernet 00 on the switch. And let's say drag another router into the topology, move that around. Click here, drag it to the router. So second Ethernet interface of the switch to the first Ethernet interface of the router. Now, if I try and start up this topology by clicking on Simulate, Start Lab, notice I get an error message, System Not Licensed. You have to license your system before you can start using it. This is the second video in my series showing you how to download, install, and configure Cisco VIRL. If you haven't watched the first video, then please go and watch that. I've linked it here and below so that you can see the initial part of the download, installation, and configuration of Cisco VIRL. In this video, I'm continuing the series, and I'm going to show you how to license the VIRL server, and then I'm going to show you how to configure the Cisco routers and switches that we added to a VIRL topology. So 2 big things in this video. I'm going to show you how to license the VIRL server, and I'm going to show you how to configure the Cisco routers and switches and verify connectivity between the devices in our VIRL topology. Okay, so let's get started. Now, probably the hardest part of the initial setup is the licensing. Now, if I try and start up this topology by clicking on Simulate, Start Lab, notice I get an error message, System Not Licensed. You have to license your system before you can start using it. This product uses smart licensing. I'm going to click Register to register a license. Now, in this example, I've been given a token from the developers. I'll add a link below this video. to a licensing video for Cisco Virl once the product is live to show you the process if it's different. But basically you need to get a token from the Virl website. So all you need to do is paste the token in that you've been given and then click register to register your product with Cisco Smart Licensing. Once it's registered, it'll say registration status registered, license authorization status authorized. You'll see your smart account details. The virtual account I'm using here is from one of the Virl developers. So now that my license has been authorized, I can go to Lab Setup and select my lab and click Simulate and click Start Lab. My computer's CPU is starting to go crazy now. I should be using Cisco Virl on a computer with more RAM, but I wanted to simply show you the full process of getting Virl up and running. Okay, so it took my computer a while to boot up these devices because I'm not using the recommended minimum amount of RAM, but that's okay for this demonstration. Notice I've got a little green tick on my devices, and now when I hover over the device, I could either stop it or I could open up a console. And this changes to a black screen. I can click Open Console. I'll move this up because my resolution is quite low on this laptop. Okay, so one issue I've been having is I'm using the Brave browser here, and it's causing all kinds of issues when I try and open up a console to the device. I had to lower my shield in Brave so that I can access the terminal. So you probably don't want to use Brave. So I'm actually going to close this down. So what I'm going to do rather than use Brave is start Google Chrome, and I'm going to navigate to that Virl server and log in with my username of admin, password of Cisco123, and I'm going to open up my topology. And as you can see, the devices have booted. I can see green ticks next to the devices. I can move the topology around by simply clicking in this white space and dragging the devices around. I could add a node, but I'm going to collapse that. I'm going to move this up because my resolution on this laptop isn't great. Now notice in my lab info, I can see 4 nodes, 3 links, 20 interfaces. Simulate allows me to start, stop, or wipe a lab. I can see my nodes, and I can see that they've booted. I can see their uptime and CPU utilization. But let's click on one of the devices and notice I have this option to open up a console. So I'm going to click on the device and open up a console. So click Open Console, and I need to press Enter to activate this terminal. And as you can see right there, I'm asked, do I want to enter the initial configuration dialog? I'm going to say no. I'll click on iOS v1, open up a terminal, press Enter, and once again bypass the initial configuration dialog. So back on my first device, you can see it's busy booting up. Now notice this is clipped here. It's not looking very good, so I'm going to auto-select the columns and the rows. So 80 and 24 rows. These error messages are typical when you don't have enough RAM or CPU in your computer. This is a problem not with Virl, but with the physical hardware that I've got. I'm getting a lot of errors here about tasks taking a long time, and it's running quite slow. So I'm going to type enable, type conft, give the router a name, router 1, interface gigabit 00. That's the interface that I use. Under connectivity, I can see that gigabit 00 is connected to gigabit 00 on the switch. I'm going to no shut that interface and give it an IP address of, let's say, 10.1.1.1. Just keep it very simple. Press tab and notice /24 mask. So that's my IP address. Show IP interface brief. There are my interfaces. That interface is up. Now please notice I'm doing everything through my browser here. I'm not running any local software apart from Chrome. Everything is running currently in my browser. I'm going to click iOS v1. and I'm going to open up a console to that device. Notice name is router, so let's give this a host name of router 2, interface gigabit 00, connectivity once again shows me that this router is connected via gigabit 00 to the switch on gigabit 01. So I'll go back to the console, no shut interface, IP address, let's say 10.112/24 mask. Type end, and I should hopefully be able to ping router 1 through those two switches now, and I can. So notice router 2 can ping router 1. I'll save the config of router 2, go back to router 1 or iOS v0, ping 10.112, wrong IP address there. So that should be 10.112, that works. Now the node info currently is iOS v0. Let's make that router 1. Let's click on this guy, make him router 2. So I'm simply editing everything through the GUI here. I'm not doing anything through a local thick client. Everything is being done through the browser. So by simply clicking on a device and going to console, I can access the console of that device. So again, router 1 can ping router 2. Let's create a loopback on this router. So interface loopback 0, IP address quadruple 1, 255.255.255.255/32 mask. And actually, let's run OSPF here. So router OSPF 1, network, and I'll enable OSPF on all interfaces in area 0, and I'll save that config. Go to router 2. I'm looking at the console, so interface loopback 0, IP address quadruple 2, router OSPF 1, network, and I'll enable OSPF on all interfaces. And I'll save the config. Back on router 1, show IP route. We haven't learnt any OSPF routes yet. Show IP OSPF neighbor. We're at two-way drother at the moment. Status changed to xstart. Router 2 is the designated router on this segment. Now again, this laptop doesn't have enough RAM in it. I'm running below the minimum recommended RAM for Virl, so it's running a bit slower than I would have expected. OSPF adjacency has now been formed. We've gone from loading to full. So show IP OSPF neighbor. Notice full DR. Show IP route. We've got a OSPF route that's been learnt. So I should be able to ping the loopback of router 2, which I can. I'll click on router 2 and I'll ping the loopback of router 1, and that works. Okay, so that was a basic demonstration of Cisco Virl. I've shown you how to download VMware Workstation Player. I've shown you how to download Cisco Virl. The interface may be slightly different when Virl goes live. I've shown you how to import Virl into VMware Workstation Player. I've shown you how to license the Virl server. The token process may be slightly different once again. Use the link below this video to see another video where I show you the updated licensing information if it's changed. But it's very simple to build a topology in Cisco Virl. Interface is very nice. I can go back to Lab Manager. Under Tools, notice there are a whole bunch of options here. I can see my licensing information. I can see system administration information. Like I can download labs as an example. There's a whole bunch of options in Cisco Virl. I'll talk more about the Cisco Virl options in subsequent videos, but I simply wanted to show you how to get Cisco Virl up and running initially. I think Ralph and Simon and the Cisco Virl team have done a fantastic job here. Fantastic product, looks good, has all the images built into it. The licensing process is a lot easier than it was in the past. Fantastic product. I'd highly recommend that you use Cisco Virl. This is going to give serious competition to GNS3 and EVE-NG, And I'll probably be using Cisco Virl more and more now because it's a Cisco official product. Now, Cisco Virl supports a whole bunch of devices. We've got WAN emulators. We've got devices such as Ubuntu servers here, so I could access an Ubuntu server directly within Cisco Virl. There are unmanaged switches, various other devices. You can add your own devices to Cisco Virl as well. But notice Cisco devices such as ASAs are also built into Cisco Virl and are available within Cisco Virl. So you can build fantastic Cisco topologies directly within Virl. Great product. Highly recommend Cisco Virl. I personally will be using Cisco Virl more and more. Highly recommend this product. This is one of multiple videos where I'm going to show you how to download, install, configure, and use EVE-NG. Now, unlike other videos out there, I'm going to show you the full process to get EVE-NG working. I'm going to show you hardware requirements. I'm going to show you how to enable nested virtualization in the BIOS of your computer. I'm going to show you how to download VMware Workstation Player, how to download EVE-NG, how to import that into VMware Workstation Player, how to set various settings based on best practices, how to get EVE-NG booted and set up initially, but also then how to upload Cisco IOS images to EVE-NG. So how do you get Cisco IOS images? I'll show you that process. Then I'll show you how to upload those images into EVE-NG. One of the confusing things when you first start EVE-NG is you think, okay, it's working, but you can't build any topologies because you need to first download images from Cisco's website, and then you need to do some configuration inside EVE-NG to get it all working. Now that means there's a lot of content. So use this menu or the menu below to jump to the specific parts of the video that are of interest to you. Now, this video may get too long, so I may have to create additional videos, but I'll link those below as well if you want to watch something else. So as an example, if the video gets too long and I can't show you how to download and use Cisco IOS images in this specific video, you may need to jump to a separate video, but again, use the link below if you need to go look at other topics that are not covered in this specific video. I want to make sure that you can get the software working properly on your laptop. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Now, there's a lot of good documentation on the EVE-NG website. One of the things you need to be aware of is there are different versions of EVE-NG. So if you go to Features Compare Editions, you'll notice that there's a Community Edition, Professional Edition, and Learning Center Edition. In this video, I'm going to download the Community Edition, which is free, and I'll show you how to get that set up. It doesn't have as many features as the Professional Edition. The Professional Edition costs 99 euros, but it does give you many, many more features. Those are listed here. Notice as an example, the node limit for the Community Edition is 63 nodes, whereas for the Professional, it's 1024 nodes. Now, with regards to documentation, one of the first things I would suggest you download is either the Professional Cookbook or the Community Cookbook, depending on which version you're using. So I'll get the Community Cookbook because that's what I'm going to be demonstrating here. One of the first questions people typically ask with this kind of setup is, what are the requirements? And I don't want to bore you reading through the requirements in a video. You can download this cookbook and have a look yourself. So as an example, just in brief, you need at least 8 gig of RAM. You need an Intel i5 or i7 processor with Intel virtualization and BIOS. That's really important, especially if you want to run Cisco appliances. You need to have VTX or Intel virtualization enabled, and I'll show you how to enable that in this example on my laptop. You also need internet connectivity. That's a requirement. You need 40 gig of disk space. Now, this applies to all platforms that you may use, whether it's Virl, is dependent on what type of topology you want to run. If you want to run just 2 basic Docker containers, you don't need a lot of RAM and CPU to do that. But if you want to run a very large Cisco topology of viral images, you need more hardware. That kind of information is listed in this document again with regards to recommended system requirements, as well as dedicated server bare metal requirements. And what's really nice here is they have a nodes per lab calculator. So have a look at this calculator if you want to work out the sizing for your lab. Now, with regards to virtualization platforms and software, notice VMware Workstation Pro is supported, Play is supported, ESXi is supported from these releases. Ubuntu Server 16.04 LTS for bare metal is supported, as well as Google Cloud. On the website, if you go to documentation, installation, system requirements, they essentially explain that, including the fact that VirtualBox is not supported. So you cannot use VirtualBox if you want to use EVE-NG. You cannot use Ubuntu 18 or 19. Those are not supported. So please be aware of the requirements before you try and install EVE-NG. So in my example, I've got a Windows computer. I'm going to download VMware Workstation Player. I do meet the minimum hardware requirements. I've got an i7 processor, 8 GB of RAM. This laptop has got nested virtualization enabled in the BIOS, but I'm going to show you that right now so that you can see how to enable that if you're not sure. It is dependent on your laptop, so the key sequence that you use will vary depending on the vendor of laptop. But let me show you now how to enable VTX or nested virtualization in the BIOS, and then I'll show you how to download the software. Okay, so I need to enable nested virtualization or VTX on my laptop. So what I'm going to do is shut it down. I'm going to power it on. And in this example, for this laptop, I'm going to hold the F2 key down. So you can see here BIOS information. What I'm going to do is go to the next menu. And the important piece is Intel virtualization technology. That's currently enabled. There are some other options like hyperthreading, Intel AES-NI, VTD, but the one that I want is Intel virtualization technology. You need that to be enabled to do nested virtualization in VirtualBox or VMware Workstation. So I'm going to save those settings and say yes to save. The laptop will reboot. Okay, so now I can log in. And I've been able to log in successfully. So if you have problems, make sure that Intel virtualization technology or VTX, Intel VTX is enabled on your laptop. So to download EVE-NG, simply go to Downloads and select the version that you want to download. I'm going to download an OVA, which makes it a lot easier to do the installation. You could do an ISO installation, but I'm going to download an OVA from Google and click download. Click download anyway. So the OVA is now being downloaded. Now, once again, in the cookbook, they show you how to do the installation. So we have VMware Workstation Pro or VMware Workstation Player, and they show you how to do the installation using an ISO image. All the steps are shown here. And they also show you how to do the installation using an OVA image, which is what I'm showing you here. This makes things a lot simpler when you're doing the installation, but you can use an ISO image if you prefer. Now on the downloads page, scrolling down, they give you a link to VMware Workstation Player. So to download VMware Workstation Player, simply click on this link and you're taken to the downloads page. You can also find that by simply going to vmware.com, going to downloads, free product downloads, Workstation Player, selecting your operating system. In this example, I'm using Windows, so I'm going to download Windows VMware Workstation Player 15. Okay, so at this point, my VMware Workstation Player software has downloaded, and I've also got EVE-NG downloaded. Now, the reason I've downloaded VMware Workstation Player is I need hypervisor software to run this OVA. I'm running Windows here. EVE-NG uses Linux. as the operating system. So I need to have the hypervisor installed, and then I import the OVA into the hypervisor. First step is to double click on the VMware Player executable. I'm asked, do I want to allow this app to make changes to my device? I'm going to say yes. VMware Workstation Player installation starts. The setup wizard displays, and in this example, I'm basically going to take the defaults for most options. So I'm going to click next. You need to agree to the license. I'm going to do that and click next. I'm not going to change the default installation directory. I'm going to click next. In this example, I'm not going to join the Customer Experience Improvement Program. I'm going to click next. Shortcuts, I'll leave at the defaults. Click next. Installation is now ready, so I'm going to click install. And the software is now installed. Now, virtual network drivers are also installed, so don't get worried if you suddenly see extra network adapters in control panel. That's normal. Okay, so the installation is completed. I'm going to click finish. And what I'll do now is start up VMware Workstation Player. Now, VMware Workstation Player is free for non-commercial use. If you are using this commercially, you need to enter a license. I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to click continue, and I'm going to click finish. VMware Workstation Player has now started. I'm going to click on Player, click File, click Open. Browse to my Downloads directory, select the EVE-NG VM, and click Open. I'm going to leave everything at the defaults and click Import. The EVE-NG virtual machine is now imported. And there you go. Now, before I start it up, there are some defaults here, but I want to edit those settings. So I'm going to go to Edit Virtual Machine Settings. Now, this default is too high for my laptop. When I look at my PC only has 8 gig of RAM in it. I can't allocate a full 8 gig to EVE-NG. So I'm going to reduce this to 4096. With regards to processors, I'm also going to reduce this down to, let's say, 2 processors. Now, this once again depends on the hardware that you have in your laptop or computer. Have a look at the EVE-NG cookbook for the calculator and details of how much RAM and CPU you need for specific types of topologies. Once again, the moral of the story is allocate as much RAM as you possibly can and as many CPUs as you can, but that really depends on the hardware. Now, this is really important. Virtualize Intel VTX or AMD V. This has to be enabled as an example if you want to run Cisco Virtual images in your EVE-NG topology. So make sure that that is also enabled. Make sure that the BIOS has VTX enabled. I showed you previously how to do that. Now, it's recommended that if you're using a laptop, use NAT rather than bridged adapters. You want to use NAT as an example because if you're going from one wireless network to another, your IP address could change, and that could affect the IP address allocated to EVE-NG. So you probably want to use NAT in most cases with a laptop, but in my example, because I'm going to be using this in my home network and I want to connect to EVE-NG remotely, and I can statically set my IP address to my home network here. So I'm going to use bridged. In most cases, however, if you've got a laptop, you're going to want to use NAT. If you're using a PC that's physically connected to the network, you're going to want to use bridged. But that's fine for me, so I'm going to click OK. Once again, go to the documentation on EVE-NG's website. Go to the Community Edition workbook. And in the installation portion of this workbook, they show you step by step what I've just demonstrated. And they show you here as an example that NAT is recommended for laptops to avoid the EVE-NG management interface IP address changing. But for a desktop PC, you could use either NAT or bridged. So just to reiterate, when you import this, go to Edit Virtual Machine Settings, make sure that your RAM is set appropriately, make sure that your processors are configured, that you have this enabled, and that you either set this to NAT or bridged. I'm going to power on this virtual machine. Now I'm told that the following software is available for download: VMware Tools for Linux. I'm going to download and install the VMware Tools. I'm told that all updates are finished, so I'm going to click Close. My VM has now booted. I'm told that the default root password is Eve. So I'm going to log in with username root, password Eve. Now I'm told to specify a new root password. Even though the password is not displayed, it's actually accepting it. So I'm going to type my password in, repeat it. I can change the host name if I want to. I'm not going to do that. I can change the domain name if I want to. I'm not going to do that. Just press enter. Now you can either use DHCP or static IP addresses here. In my example, I'm going to use static IP addresses because I know what IP address I want to allocate to this VM so that I can access it from my Mac or other devices in my network. So I'm going to specify that IP address. I'm going to specify the subnet mask. I'm going to specify the default gateway. Specify my DNS server and secondary DNS server. I could also specify an NTP server. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to press enter, and I'm not using a proxy server here, so I'm going to press enter to complete the settings, and EVE-NG is now rebooted. Now once EVE-NG reboots, log in and make sure that you can ping the internet. One of the requirements is that you have internet connectivity. So make sure that you use ping to test that you have internet connectivity. You could also check the IP address of your device by using ifconfig. I'll use more here. So IP address of this device is 192.168.1.200 in my example. But it's important that you have internet connectivity, so test that you have internet connectivity by pinging, for instance, google.com. Okay, now that we've done that, we can open up a web browser and access EVE-NG. So in my web browser, 192.168.1.200. Now to log in, you use the username admin, password Eve. You don't use root in this case. I'm going to select HTML5 console rather than the native console and click sign in. And there you go. I've now logged in to EVE-NG. What I'm going to do is add a new lab and give it a name, my first EVE-NG lab. I'll leave the version at 1 and leave everything else as it is and click save. What I'm going to do here is add an object, which is a node. And I need to select the node to add to the topology. Notice how all of these devices are not available because I haven't added an operating system to EVE-NG. So ASA-V is not available, CSR-V is not available, Cisco IOS-V is not available, Layer 2 is not available. If I scroll down all the way to the end, my virtual PC or VPCS device is available. So I'll add 2 nodes to the topology and I'll click save. So I now have 2 nodes and I can connect the one node to the other and specify the interface. I'll just use Ethernet 0 and click save. I'll start these 2 nodes. As you can see, they have started, and I can click on the first node and I'm able to access the device using an HTML web interface. So this is through my browser. I could set the IP address of the first device with an IP address of 10.1.1.1, subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Second device, I'll click on that. I can also access this device through a web browser console. So once again, this is running through my web browser. Specify the IP address of the second device as that 10.1.1.2. And what I should be able to do is ping from the one device to the other, which I can. So PC1 can ping PC2 and PC2 can ping PC1. Okay, so that's how you download, install, and configure EVE-NG using VMware Workstation Player and EVE-NG Community Edition. Now, you're probably going to want to add a Cisco node to the topology. So the next step is to add Cisco IOS V to the topology. Now, that's not possible without doing some additional steps. And this video is getting too long now, so I'll put that in a separate video. Now, for completeness, I'm going to show you a second EVE-NG VM. And in this example, I'm going to use NAT. I'm going to edit the virtual machine settings. Once again, reduce the RAM to 4092. Set my processors to 2. Make sure that VTX is enabled. And I'm going to change the adapters to use NAT rather than bridged. This is once again the recommended setting if you're using a laptop and you're traveling as an example and your IP addresses change. So I'm going to start the virtual machine. Notice the IP address that's been allocated, 192.168.179.128. If I open up a CMD prompt and type ipconfig, Ethernet adapter 4 is using this IP address, 192.168.179.1. So I need to configure my EVE-NG host with an IP address in that subnet. So I'll log in with my username of root, password of Eve. I'll set a password of Eve again, set my host name to EVE-NG, leave the domain name as it is. Now I'm going to specify a static IP address. So use arrow key down, press spacebar to select static, press enter to specify OK. 192.168, once again, 179 dot something. So I'll say 179.200. Subnet mask used here is 255.255.255.0. So I'll press enter there and then specify my subnet mask. Now the default gateway is going to be .2, not .1. This is the IP address of my host. I'm going to use .2 here. So not this, but 192.168.179.2. Press enter. I'll set my DNS server the same. Secondary DNS server will be Google. I won't use NTP, and I'm not using a proxy server. I'm just going to use a direct connection. So leave that at the default and press enter. EVE-NG now reboots. So make sure you use .2 and not .1. .2 is your default gateway. .1 is the IP address allocated to your PC. So I'm told I can access the EVE-NG server using 192.168.179.200. So 192.168.179.200. And I'll be able to log into the EVE-NG server. Now, once it reboots, I want to log back in and make sure that I have internet connectivity. So make sure that you can ping google.com as an example. So again, ifconfig more shows me that the IP address of this EVE-NG server is 192.168.179.200. And that's because on this server, I've specified that I'm using NAT. So hopefully that's not confusing. I've set up two EVE-NG servers here. I wanted to show you both. I've got one running NAT using 192.168.179.200. And then I've got another one using IP address 192.168.1.200. You obviously don't have to do that. If you're using a physical PC connected into a network using an Ethernet cable as an example, you're probably going to want to use bridged. If you're using a laptop like this and you're roaming around and you want to make sure that your IP address doesn't conflict with another IP address on the network, use NAT so that your laptop can access the EVE-NG device no matter whether you've got an internet connection or not. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, please like this video, and please click on the bell to get notifications. I'm David Bombal, and I want to wish you all the very best. 'Cause we both deserve it all. In a previous video, which I've linked here and below, I showed you how to download and install EVE-NG. I showed you how to get a basic topology working in EVE-NG. Now that's fine, but for most of us, we want to add more complex nodes than just a VPCS. By default, I can add a VPCS device to EVE-NG, but what happens if I want to add another type of device, such as a Cisco router? So as an example, Cisco VIOS, which gives me a router image that I can run in EVE-NG. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how to download Cisco IOS images from cisco.com and show you how to get a Cisco topology working within EVE-NG. Now there's quite a few steps here. There's quite a few things that you need to do, but if you follow along, you'll be able to get a Cisco topology working in EVE-NG. Now, before we get started, please would you subscribe to my YouTube channel? Please would you like this video if you find it useful? And please click on the bell to get notifications when I upload a new video. Okay, so let's get started. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is go to virl.cisco.com so that I can download images to use in EVE-NG. Now, you can find Cisco VIRL images on the internet. I'm not a lawyer, but all I can say is it's probably not such a good idea to use those. In my example, I'm going to get images from Cisco's website because I already have an account. I'm going to enter my email address, click Next, specify my password, and click Sign In. I'm going to go to My Account, and I'm going to click Download VIRL. Now to download images, click on All Releases, click One, scroll down to iOS V as an example, click on the download link, click Accept a License Agreement, and as you can see, Cisco VIOS, which is our router image, is being downloaded. I'm also going to download iOS V Layer 2. So select that image, accept the license agreement, and the image is now downloaded. Now, as always, it makes sense to read the documentation. On the EVE-NG website, documentation, how-tos, we're told how to upload images to EVE-NG. There's a how-to page here of how to add Cisco IOS images, so VIRL images, to EVE-NG. Now, I want to point out something really important with regards to the Cisco images. The Cisco IOS V image is a VMDK image. Notice a VMDK in the name. That's important because a VMDK image is uploaded differently than a QCOW2 image. The iOS V Layer 2 image is a QCOW2 image, ends in QCOW2. So the process for uploading a QCOW2 image, once again, is going to be different to a VMDK image. ASAV, as an example, is a QCOW2 image. iOS XRV, QCOW2. CSR 1000V, QCOW2. So again, just take note of the image type because that changes the way that we upload the image to EVE-NG. Versions in this guide are based on these images, which are different to the images that I've downloaded from Cisco's website. So we'll adjust the guide based on the file names that I've downloaded versus what they're showing here. Now here's an important thing to take note of. There's an EVE-NG image name, and then there's the original image name. What's important to note here is VIOS hyphen or dash, and here we've got VIOS L2 dash, whereas the downloaded image has this underscore in it. That's also true for the image that I've downloaded. VIOS underscore L2 is the name used here. So we need to adjust the file name based on what's in this guide, and they've actually got a table where they explain the naming. There's a QEMU folder name, vendor, and then the QCOW2 image name. If I scroll down and I'll look for Cisco, we've got VIOS hyphen and VIOS L2. So this is the router image. This is the switch image from Cisco. Notice also here, we've got the QEMU image QCOW2 name. That becomes important when we go through this process. Again, I'm going to show you step by step how to do this. This is probably the hardest part about getting this set up. But if you follow these steps, it's not too difficult. We are actually told here that Virl has two image formats, VMDK and QCOW2. QCOW2 is almost ready to be used. Process is very simple. I'm going to show you that in a moment. VMDK requires a few more steps. We have to do some conversions, but again, I'm going to show you all the steps in a moment. So in this document, we have steps for VMDK files. And then when I scroll down, we've got separate steps for QCOW2 images. So you need to follow the steps for the specific image that you've downloaded. Have you downloaded a VMDK image or have you downloaded a QCOW2 image? I'm going to start now with VIOS because VIOS is a VMDK file. So again here, VIOS, the routing image, is VMDK, whereas the iOS vLayer 2 image is a QCOW2 file. All I'm going to do here, again, is follow the steps in this document, and you'll see that it'll work. I'm going to download WinSCP, which allows us to upload files to EVE-NG. You could use FileZilla if you like, but I'd recommend that you use WinSCP on Windows rather than FileZilla. Some people have had problems with FileZilla, but it's really up to you actually. But I'd recommend this software. So I'm going to download the software. In this example, I'm using a Windows laptop, so WinSCP works here. If you're using a Mac, you may need to use FileZilla. Okay, so the software has downloaded. I'm going to install it and basically just stick with all the defaults. And click Finish. Now back in the documentation, we need to create a folder within EVE-NG. So on the EVE-NG server, I'm going to log in as root and Eve. Now I'll zoom in here because this is quite difficult to read. But basically, if I go to opt ls, notice some files and folders exist there. What we're going to do is make a directory. Now doing it through the console of VMware is perhaps not the easiest way to do it. So what I'll do is simply download PuTTY. That'll make things easier. So I'm just going to download 64-bit PuTTY and then start that up. And I'm going to SSH to my server. This is the EVE-NG server. So ifconfig, and I'll push that to more actually. Shows me that the IP address of the server is 192.168.1.200. So I'm going to SSH to the server, accept the key. I'm going to log in as root, and the password is Eve. So that's a lot easier to see what's going on. PWD shows me where I am. I'll go to opt again. ls-l shows me the files here. Back on the EVE-NG website, we need to create this folder, and this name needs to match the router image. So what I'll do is copy this into Notepad. And the file name that I need to use is this file name. So this is the name of the file that's been downloaded from Cisco's website. This is VIOS. That's the name that we're going to use. So I'll copy that into PuTTY and press enter. So ls-l, there's our unet lab, so cd unet lab, ls-l. We need to go to add-ons, ls-l, QEMU, cd QEMU, ls. There's the folder that we've just created. Now for all the Linux people, so that I don't get into trouble, you could obviously just do it this way. So from the home directory, as an example, just jump directly into that directory. But first step is we've created this folder, and now we need to upload the downloaded image into that folder using WinSCP. So I'm going to use Secure File Transfer Protocol, specify the server, specify my username, which is root, and password of Eve, and click Login. Accept the keys. I'm going to go to my downloads directory, select this file. What I need to do is go to this directory, so I'll copy that and then paste that here. So that's where I am now. I'll upload this image. So back in PuTTY, if I go to VIOS and I press tab there, ls, and I'll say ls-l, notice this file is being uploaded. So the file has been uploaded to EveNG. You can see that here. So we've uploaded the image. Next step is from the Eve CLI, go to the newly created folder, and that's actually where I am. Now this is quite big, so I'll reduce the size slightly so that it's more readable. Okay, so there we are. So I'll clear the screen. So we're in this directory currently, and now we're told to rename the original image to have VMDK as an extension at the end. So ls shows us the file. Move allows us to move the file. I press tab there, so type vi, press tab, and then add VMDK at the end. So ls now shows us our file with the VMDK extension. Next step is to convert the VMDK to QCOW. So we've got to use this command. So I'll copy the command. And to make it easier to see what I'm doing, I'm simply following these instructions. So here's the command that I've copied, and I'm going to simply do that with the file name. So they say change it to this at the end. That once again comes from their table. If I go back to their table, notice this is the name that we're using. So I'm going to paste that in, and that'll convert the image. ls shows us that there. Next step is to delete the raw MDK image file. So I suppose you could just move that to a different directory if you wanted to, but I'll remove that image per their instructions. So ls shows me that that image now exists in this folder. We then need to fix the permissions. So I'm going to copy this. I'll clear the screen just to make it easier. Paste that command in. That's been done. And there's our file once again. So what I did there was prepare and load VMDK images from Virl. You could do something similar for QCOW2 images. So as an example, notice this VIOS layer 2 image is a QCOW2 image. So I'm going to copy the name so that I've got the name. We need to make this directory. So I'm going to paste that into Notepad without the QCOW2 extension. So paste it in like this. The extension name, however, has to be VIOS layer 2. Once again, going back to their naming convention, this is the name of the folder. So I need to have VIOS layer 2 and then the name that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to copy that. In this example, I'm currently in my home directory, but I'm going to simply paste that command in per their instructions. And then I'm going to upload the image using WinSCP. So I have this directory for VIOS. I'm going to upload that image to the VIOS directory. I'm going to go to that folder. So I'll copy this command, paste that into PuTTY. ls shows me that I've got 2 directories here. I'll go to the vios layer 2 directory. There's the QCOW2 file. What I need to do is change the name to this based on their table. Once again, that table is shown at the bottom of this page. So what I'll do here is clear the screen. So once again, that's the file. So MV for move, vios, press tab, and then I'll simply copy this to make sure I don't make any mistakes and paste that in. ls shows us the file. Here it is. And then I'm going to fix the permissions. So copy that and paste that in. That's now been done. So that's probably the hardest piece. I'm going to go back to the EVE-NG GUI, log in as admin with password Eve, use the HTML5 console and click login. And what I'm going to do now is add a node to the topology, and hopefully we should see that these are blue, which they are, because I now have images available. So I'll select vios. In this example, I'll add 2 nodes to the topology. You can specify a whole bunch of options here. I'll leave everything at default and click save. So I've got 2 routers added to the topology now. And what I'll do is add another node. In this case, I'll add a switch. So vios layer 2, I'll just simply add 1 switch and click save. What I'll do is connect the router gigabit 00 to gigabit 01 on the switch and click save. And then I'll connect the switch to the second router. So gigabit 02 to 00 on the second router, click save. So what I'll do is start up the first router. It's started. I'll click on the router to open up a console. You can see the router is booting up. I'll click on the switch, start it, click on it again. Console is opened. There's my switch booting up. I just moved the tabs around, so there's the router, there's the switch. I'll click on the second router, start it up, click on it again to get a console. I'll move that console across. These are fairly big devices. They take a while to boot up. That once again depends on how much RAM and CPU you've allocated to your server. I haven't allocated that much here. It's running on this laptop once again. But as you can see, the switch interfaces are coming up. The routers are still booting. Okay, so here's my first router. I'll say no to bypass the initial configuration dialog. Switch is booted up as well. I've got a prompt on the switch. Second router is still booting. On the first router, press return to get started. So I'll press enter a few times. While we're waiting for that, let's go back to the switch, type enable, type conft, interface VLAN 1, no shut this. I'll give it an IP address of 10.1.1, let's say 252. And no shut, interface VLAN 1, give it a host name of, let's say, switch 1. So ping, and notice these are just browser tabs, so I can detach them and simply have it available over here. So I could, as an example, have my different devices detached and running in different browsers. So there's router 1. Here's router 2. I'll put it here, put router 1 here. And here's my switch, put it in the middle. Now I've zoomed in quite a lot here, so we don't have a lot of space, but ping 10.1.1.252, switch can ping itself. On the router, give it a host name of router 1, show IP interface brief. Interfaces on the router are shut down, so I'll go into interface gigabit 00, no shut it. IP address 10.1.1.253 as an example. So show IP interface brief. We can see this interface has come up on the switch. Show IP interface brief. All the interfaces are up. Now in later releases of EVE-NG, it'll have the ability to dynamically know if an interface is up or down. Here it's showing all the interfaces up even though there are no cables connected, but that changes in later releases. Now you may hear my fan going crazy on that laptop. It's because I'm doing recordings and I'm running multiple devices. Now I'm pinging an address that doesn't exist in my topology. So let's try that again. Ping 10.1.1.252. Now that is the switch. So I'm pinging the switch at the moment. Let's get the second router up and running. I'll bypass the startup config. The moral of the story is the more RAM and CPU you can allocate, the better. So this is struggling a little bit on this little laptop. But let's go back to the switch. Can the switch ping the first router? Yes, it can. Can it telnet to the router? Connection is refused. So show run pipe begin VTY. I need to do some changes on the VTY line, such as allowing traffic in. So line VTY04, login, password, Cisco, transport input all, create and enable password of Cisco. And what I'll do is save the configurations. I went fairly quickly there, but this is basic CCNA knowledge. Notice I can now telnet to the router from the switch. If you're struggling with these basics, please have a look at my CCNA courses or other courses that explain the basics of device configuration. Here I'll configure router 2 with a hostname of R2. Go onto the gigabit interface. So 00, no shut it. IP address 10.1.1.254 in this case. Hopefully that should be able to ping the first router now. So 253, which it can, and hopefully it'll be able to ping the switch, which it can. So I'll exit out of the router, back on the console of the switch. Here is my first router, save the configuration, switch, save the configuration, and second router, save the configuration. Let's do some CDP, show CDP neighbors. And this might be confusing, so I'll just maximize this. What you'll notice is the router is connected to gigabit 01. Router 2 is connected to gigabit 02 on the local switch. Show IP interface brief. No device is connected to gigabit 00. The two routers are connected to these two interfaces on the switch. And that's per the topology that I created. Now you could get these PCs to connect to the topology. So I'll delete that connection. In EVE-NG Community Edition, you can't live connect devices. So I'd have to shut these devices down and then connect them. So I won't bother doing that here, just for the sake of time. But as always, on Cisco devices, make sure that you save your config and then you can shut down the topology. Okay, so that was quite a detailed video showing you how to get Cisco IOS-V and IOS-V Layer 2 VIRL images working in EVE-NG. That's probably the hardest part about it, is uploading those images, getting the directories right. Once you're used to the process, it's not that difficult, but there you go. I've shown you how to do that for both IOS-V and IOS-V Layer 2. Okay, so hopefully that's helped you. If you found this video useful, please will you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please would you like this video, and please click on the bell to get notifications when I post a new video. 'Cause we both deserve it all. I've got some great news for you. Cisco DevNet have created a hosted version of Cisco VIRL, or as it's called now, Cisco Modeling Labs. You can now access CML for free using the hosted solution hosted by Cisco DevNet. You don't need any software, you don't need iOS images. All you need to do is download a VPN client, so AnyConnect client from Cisco DevNet, and then you'll be able to access labs using the DevNet sandbox. Hank Preston has created this lab. In a previous video, which I've linked here and below, I showed you how to use Cisco VIRL for free using one of the Cisco DevNet sandboxes. But this sandbox is specifically using CML, or VIRL 2 as it was called. And the fantastic thing about the sandbox is you don't have to use a pre-built topology. Hank has created a pre-built topology with a whole bunch of devices, Nexus devices, ASA, iOS V Layer 2, iOS V, etc. But you don't have to use that topology. You can create your own lab for free now using the Cisco DevNet sandbox. I think this is fantastic news because a lot of people can't afford $200 a year for Cisco VIRL. So rather than paying for VIRL and running it locally on your computer, you can use CML in the cloud hosted by Cisco DevNet for free. Now there are some limitations. You have to firstly book this lab to be able to use it. So depending on how busy it is, you may not get a spot. And there's a maximum of 4 hours currently. So you can only use the lab for up to 4 hours. But I think it's fantastic that Cisco DevNet are providing this. So big shout out to Hank Preston, to Susie Wee, and the DevNet team for making this available for everyone. Hank has told me that he's going to be creating new labs or additional labs. So this is the first lab using CML or VIRL 2. New labs will be created. So depending on when you're watching this, you'll be able to access this one lab or additional labs hosted on Cisco DevNet. Some more good news is I've been speaking with Hank Preston, and he's going to once again be creating videos with me about DevNet topics. So if you've got any questions or topics that you want him to cover, then please put it in the comments below. Now, this is only one of multiple surprises. I'm going to be announcing a lot more stuff in the next few days and next few weeks. So if you want to win a free course as an example, you have to be quick for some of my giveaways. So make sure that you've subscribed to my YouTube channel. Make sure that you click on the bell to get notifications. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it. That really helps me with the YouTube robots. Now, at the time of this recording, CML Personal Edition hasn't been released. It's going to be released on the 12th of May. So if you want to get hands-on using CML in preparation for the release date, now's your chance. CML Enterprise is available, but CML Personal Edition isn't. The main difference between Enterprise and Personal is the expansion up to 300 nodes, as well as TAC support. The software is the same. I've spoken to the VIRL developers and they've told me that it's exactly the same software used in Enterprise as well as Personal Edition. Personal Edition is, however, limited to 20 nodes, so 20 Cisco nodes. You can run Linux nodes in addition to that. So the built-in Linux nodes, as an example, can be added to your topology to get you over that 20 node limit. So as an example, you could have 20 Cisco routers and switches as well as 10 Linux hosts running in your topology. You also don't get support from Cisco, it's community support. So people like me are sharing and contributing to the community to help everyone use CML Personal Edition. Now, in this example, I'm going to be using a Windows laptop. Process is very similar on Windows or on a Mac as an example. You need to download the Cisco AnyConnect client, which basically sets up a VPN to Cisco DevNet so that you can access the labs. You have to install that software. Okay, so enough said. Let's get started, and I'm going to show you now, step by step, how to access the DevNet labs, how to connect to them and build your own topologies. Now, to make it easy to reserve a lab, I've created a bit.ly link. So if you use bit.ly/free CML, that'll take you to this specific sandbox. Now you need to log in. So in my example, I'm going to log in with a Cisco ID, but you could log in with Facebook or with Google or with GitHub or WebEx, but I'm going to click on login with a Cisco ID. This is once again free. So if you don't have a Cisco ID, you don't want to use social media accounts, then just create an account. You'll be prompted for your username and password. And once you've logged in, you'll be able to see the lab. So I can see it says Cisco Modeling Lab. There's a dev box. There's VLAN 1, which is a connection to the switch. There's some information here on the left-hand side. But the most important thing is you probably want to reserve a lab. So click on Reserve on the top right. Specify how long you want the lab. They only allow you to reserve up to 4 hours. So you can't specify days or weeks or minutes. Maximum is 4 hours. And then specify when you want the lab. You can specify date and time. I'm going to specify that I want it right now. So I'm going to leave this as start now. Duration is 4 hours. Click reserve to reserve the lab. Now it does take time for this lab to be set up. So what you'll notice is they have a countdown telling you when the lab will be available. It takes at least 10 minutes for the lab to be available. So if you want to access the lab immediately, reserve it, go and get a coffee, and then come back. But it's probably better or wiser to reserve ahead of time. So try and reserve a lab for when you want it, like tomorrow or next week, so that you know it's available. This is a shared resource, so it might not be available when you want to use it. That'll depend on how busy the labs get, how many people are trying to reserve these labs. Now, a few minutes before the lab becomes available, you'll get an email from Cisco DevNet stating that they're setting up the lab. So it takes about 10 minutes to set up. One of the things you need to do is download the Cisco AnyConnect VPN client. So if you haven't got that installed, then download that and install it. And I'll show you in a moment how to do that. And then when the lab is available, you'll get one more email with your login credentials. So again, you're told if you don't have AnyConnect installed on your system, you need to download that. They've also got an installation guide to help you install the software if you're not sure how to do that. If you do have it already installed on your system, then you can connect to your lab. So we're given the lab address as well as a username and password to log in. So the first thing you need to do is download the AnyConnect client. So go to developer.cisco.com site sandbox AnyConnect or use the link that they provided. Download the software for your operating system. In this example, I'm using Windows, so I'm going to download the Windows software. It's about 32 meg in size. If you're using a Mac, then download the AnyConnect client for Mac. Okay, the software has downloaded, so I'm going to double-click on the zip file and then double-click setup.exe. Windows is complaining that this isn't a Microsoft verified app. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click install. I'm going to click yes to allow the app to make changes to my device. I'll close some of these windows. And notice here we get given a whole bunch of options. I'd recommend that you don't go with all of these options. So I'm going to select all to uncheck all of these options. And the only thing I'm going to install is the core and VPN. I'm not going to do all the other options like starting before login, stuff like that. I don't need that. I just want to use this for this lab. So I'm going to manually start it up. So I'm going to click install selected and then click OK to install the software. I need to agree to the license agreement. Software is now installed. Okay, so the software has installed. I'll click OK. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is start up the AnyConnect client. And what I'll do is copy my lab address that I was given via email. And I'll paste that in and click connect. That'll connect to Cisco DevNet. I need to put in my username, put in the password that I've been allocated, and click OK. And if my reservation is currently active, this will connect to the VPN. And as you can see there, I've now connected to Cisco DevNet. Okay, so back on Cisco DevNet's website, I'm told that I can connect to the server using this IP address, 10.10.20.161. Username is developer, password is Cisco12345. So I'll open up a browser and I'll browse to 10.10.20.161. I'm told that the connection is not private. That's good. Cisco CML is using a self-signed certificate, so I want to proceed to that server. Now my connection here is very slow. I'm currently in South Africa in lockdown. That's why my hair is so long. So the connection may not be that great. Hopefully it'll be better for you. This is one of the problems using a hosted solution. You need a decent connection. Mine isn't that great. So I'm going to log in with the username developer. Password is C1SCO12345 per the DevNet documentation. Okay, so I'm having a problem at the moment. My connection is broken. So based on my experience, what I've found is that if you have this issue, if you've just installed the VPN client and you have this issue where you can't get access to the internet, notice I can't ping any sites. So google.com, cisco.com doesn't resolve. What I'm going to do is disconnect the connection, and I'm going to quit the software, and then I'm going to run it again. So I'm going to run the VPN client for a second time. So I'm currently disconnected from the VPN, and notice I can ping google.com. So I'm going to make that a continuous ping. So hopefully when I connect, the ping will continue. So I'll click connect. It's remembered my username. I'll add my password and click OK. The ping to Google should continue succeeding while this is established. So I've now connected and I've got connectivity to Google. So that looks a lot better. So what I'll do is refresh my login page to Cisco VARL. Pings are still working to Google, and I've got a connection to the VARL server. So that's something I've experienced, Windows 10 with the AnyConnect client. So I'm going to say developer, password is C1SCO12345. And hopefully I'll be able to log in now. Pings are still working, and there you go. I've been able to log into Cisco VARL. There is a default topology once again. Hank has created this default topology, so I could, as an example, access the console of the ASA. Now in this case, I've made the mistake of using Brave as my browser. Recommend that you don't use Brave, but use Chrome or another browser to access the lab. So I'll start up Chrome. You can get it to work on Brave, but it's a lot of work. So let's just switch to using Chrome so that we don't have this server disconnect issue and other issues accessing the topology. So again, I'll bypass the warning about the certificate. I'm using Chrome in this example. Username is developer C1SC012345. Click login. And there you go. I'm back in using Chrome. I'll click on this topology again, click on the ASA, click on console, click open console, and there you go. I've now connected to the ASA in this topology. Now, I'm not going to explain all the options in Cisco VARL. I've got a whole bunch of other videos that you can watch, starting at this video in the playlist. So have a look at this video. If you want to learn how to install Cisco VARL, I've got a whole bunch of other videos on YouTube that you can watch if you want to set up Cisco VARL. But what I'd like to show you here is I could, as an example, stop this lab and then add my own lab. So I'm going to create my own lab here. I could rename that lab as, let's say, test 1. And then what I'll do is just drag a router and a switch and a router to the topology. I'll zoom in here. Now, if you watch any of my other videos, you'll notice the interface is exactly the same. This is Cisco VARL as if it's running locally. It's just running in this example on the cloud. So I'll connect the first interface to the first interface on the switch, connect the switch to the router, second interface. I'll click Simulate Start Lab to start the lab up. You can see the devices are booting. I'll click on the layer 2 switch, click on console, open console, and hopefully we'll see that booting up. And there you go. It's busy booting. While that's booting up, if I go back to Lab Manager, notice this topology has now been turned off and I'm running my own topology. You can run your own topology using this free Virl server running within Cisco DevNet. Totally free. There's no cost for using this. The disadvantage here is it's a shared resource. You may not be able to use the lab when you want to because it's busy, because lots of other people want to use this lab. You can also only reserve one session at a time. So fantastic if you haven't got Cisco Virl locally. Personally, I've purchased Cisco Virl because I want to run it locally on my local laptop. It also gives me the ability to use it whenever I want to. I'm not reliant on this lab. But I think this is a fantastic resource that you can use. You can access Cisco Virl for free when it's available. There's absolutely no cost to use this. This is sponsored by Cisco DevNet. They have a whole bunch of labs that you can access. Free labs to learn and study. Now, depending on when you're watching this, Hank is building an SD-WAN lab. So you could study for your CCMP or other certifications using the SD-WAN lab. They've got DNA Center labs. A whole bunch of labs are available directly from developer.cisco.com. Okay, so just to show you this, let's complete this lab. I'm going to bypass the initial configuration of the router, do the same on the other router, bypass the initial configuration, go back to the first router. You can see that interfaces are coming up. Got a whole bunch of log messages, but I've pressed enter a whole bunch of times. Notice I've got access to the console. I can type enable to go to privilege mode, conft, give the router a name. Let's configure the Ethernet interface with an IP address, 10.1.1/24 mask. I'll ping 10.1.1.2. That won't work because I have to configure this router first. So on router 2, enable host router 2, interface gigabit 0/0, no shut it, IP address 10.1.1.2/24 mask. Back on router 1, I probably forgot to no shut the interface, which I did forget to do. So go back on the interface, no shut it, and hopefully the ping will now succeed. So I'll press up key. There's my ping. Can we ping 10.1.1.2? Yes, we can. So router 1 can ping router 2. So again, that's how you access a free Virl server hosted by Cisco DevNet. There's no cost to use this. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Please like this video and please click on the bell to get notifications. I'm David Bombal. I want to wish you all the very best.
Yeah, let's go.